So as a final thing for today, we're going to have a panel discussion on sharing economy. Companies like Airbnb, Uber, they've been breaking headlines for the last many years, I'd say. But they've only started like roughly 5 years ago. And we have a few key people from those companies. So Oliver, Ligaya, and Paulus, please come on stage. We'll figure out the whole setting. And we're going to talk. What's the whole sharing economy about?
I was just thinking that maybe before we start the panel discussion, we could make a short introduction round just for those people who came in a little bit later.
Sure.
Right?
All right, each one of you is getting a microphone. Aren't you excited? You're getting a microphone. A one for you, a one for you, and a one for you. Rasa, so you mentioned an introduction. You want to start with that?
Yeah, so basically, maybe before I can tell a little bit about the sharing economy. So it has a lot of synonyms, and basically it's a really, really hot topic these days. Because since sharing economy showed up, it's changing business models, it's changing our behavior, it's changing consumers' behavior. And actually the first example, correct me if I'm wrong, of the shared economy, I guess that would be a library, right? Hundreds of years ago when you could just go and pick the book. But the problem there, that actually you couldn't monetize it. You know, it's just about sharing things. So that was like more for charity, non-profit organizations. But with the giant startups like Airbnb or Uber coming to the market after 2008, everything started changing. And here we have people who can discuss the sharing economy, collaborative economy, from two different points of view, right? At a global scale and at a regional scale, more concerning our region, CE and Baltics. So before Andrew starts moderating that, I would like you guys to make a really, really short introduction round, maybe like few sentences about what are you doing and what was your relationship with the sharing economy.
Oliver, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Oliver Nicholas. I'm an engineering manager at a company called Uber. We are an on-demand transportation service. And in many places we work with professional drivers, and in many other places we also work with sort of non-commercially licensed drivers, people who sort of use their own vehicles and provide transportation services on potentially on a part-time basis. So that's our contribution to the sharing economy.
All right, Ligaya?
Is this mic working?
Should be working.
All right. My name is Ligaya Tishi, and for 2 years I ran community and offline marketing for Airbnb. So for those of you that don't know, Airbnb is a platform where travelers can stay with local hosts in 140 countries and I don't know how many thousands of cities now around the world. So that is our contribution to the sharing economy. Sharing beds.
All right.
Not in that way.
And our guest from Lithuania, Paulus.
My name is Paulus. I'm CEO of a company, online rental marketplace called Dalinuosi.lt. It's a rental marketplace for Vilnius in Lithuania. So I hope I can find here some of my users as well.
Yeah, so we have quite an interesting panel. So for those of you who don't know, so starting from the left, Uber is worth over $18 billion. Airbnb is a $10 billion company. I think their valuation is rising. And Dalinuosi.lt is going to be worth $10 billion in the coming future. So these are the guys they'll be super rich. And well, Ligaya left the company, so she's already super rich. And then, no worries, just go with that. So obviously, you know, you represent companies that are super well known globally. They're not. Uber is not at all present, as in like service is not provided here. Airbnb is here. How many of you guys know Airbnb and have stayed in Airbnb?
All right.
Quite a few of you, huh?
Thanks, quite
yeah.
a lot.
Oh, wait, I want to know how many of them know Uber.
Oh.
Well, there you go. These are the guys that are traveling.
How
Well
many
done.
of you guys know Dalinuosi.lt?
What? Hey, it's about the same.
Right.
Everyone knows all the companies. Sweet. So I guess, Oliver, question to you. Uber's been making headlines for the last, at least 12 months, like every day in like every different city you're in, pretty much, right? For good and bad reasons. In June, you raised this amount of like $1.2 billion. What does a company do with $1.2 billion when you're like expanding?
That's a totally reasonable question. In the engineering department, in the infrastructure area, we try and figure out how to spend it, I guess. I think as a general case, companies raise money because they don't want to end up in a place where they are undercapitalized, right? Like there's statistics about some drastic majority of startups that go under just because they don't have enough money to cover operating costs. So for Uber, which has always had a healthy revenue stream just because of the nature of our business, we get revenue with every usage of the business. We raise that much money so that we can come up with inventive ways to go about using it for marketing and for expansion. I mean, I think a year ago we were in I want to say 100 cities, and now we're over 200 cities, 45 countries. So we're expanding as fast as we can, and that means spending costs to get startup costs to get off the ground and running. Will we ever use all that money? I don't think we could figure out a way to spend all of that money. But it's good to have it just in case you need it, and just in case you want to go on for a long time without having to raise money again.
Got it. So it's just like a safe haven that you're in. You're like, the money's in the account. Whatever you do, you can burn for the rest of the whatever it takes. Paulius, I want to talk to you. Obviously, you're starting a sharing economy company in Lithuania, which is a completely different market than the US. Both we're talking culturally, we're talking tech savvy and whatnot. What are the struggles you're having so far? You've been a year pretty much in operation, right? Where are you at right now, expansion-wise? And is capital, as Oliver mentioned, they have plenty of that. Is that the only reason why you're not expanding as fast, or is there like different reasons?
So Dalinuosi is in Vilnius, but also we launched as part of Dalinuosi, because Dalinuosi is generic platform. Sure. So it's all kind from, you can borrow from GoPro to car. We launched Rentibuzz in London. It's a rental marketplace for video and photo equipment, but it's of course different story. It's not related with Lithuania so much. Struggles. So Dalinuosi.lt was completely new thing in Lithuania market, and we said that, hey guys, you don't need to buy everything. You can rent everything you want. And the first prototype we launched 2 years ago, and we heard a lot of feedback from people. You're crazy. Something is wrong in your head. I will not borrow anything to stranger and at all. So that feedback was harsh, I would say, in the beginning. But we knew that the beginning will be quite tough. And now I would say we are growing quite fast in Vilnius, and the summer was extremely successful for us. Of course, we have some issues with, let's say, payment gateways, because we don't have such convenient payment gateways as USA and UK markets has. Insurance company are more suspicious here, maybe not bad word suspicious here, but
careful. Yeah,
careful here than in big markets, and so struggles are. I would say that from user sides, we are on the right way. Just we need to have, let's say, more business partnership, and for example, to reduce risk and etc. in that level. And I would say that after that, we will have pretty good product even in Lithuania.
All right, and Ligaya, you were at Airbnb as which employee?
I think number 12.
Number 12, right? So you saw that from the very beginning till I remember 700 people, roughly that. So how did Airbnb expand, and how do you expand? Why did Airbnb stick? What made it such a service, that everyone out of sudden started using in this very, short period of time?
That is a multiple-part question.
Sure.
So I think that the value proposition is sort of spoken to humanity throughout our existence. Before our grandparents' generation, people would stay at the homes of friends. It was a natural behavior that really in our parents' generation, our generation sort of tapered off with the commercial hotel industry. So I think we came back to practices that had far more history than the current commercial market. And so in that sense, it was really natural. So I think also, obviously, there's significant financial benefit for people. If you're hosting on Airbnb and you're charging people, anywhere from 40 euros to 100 euros per night, that can pay your entire rent within a week. And so I think that obviously really spoke to people too. And many people actually rent out their primary homes, but also people have been, turning this into a business where they become property managers for multiple properties. Obviously, that's been a really controversial topic. As you guys may know, there's been regulatory issues in many states and countries similar to Uber. But your original question, which was, how did we expand and why did we expand? Ultimately, it comes down to competition. Airbnb is a company that's only valuable if you're one of our users, if you can go anywhere that you want to. Like, if we were only available, say, in China and Spain, then, it wouldn't really have the same utility for you as if we were available anywhere you wanted to go all around the world. And so we understood this from the very beginning, and we thought, okay, we can go about this two ways. We can scale slowly and steadily and focus on certain markets, or we can get as broad of a swath as possible and provide as much value as we can to our users. Now, there were a number of different competitors in different regions. Some in Asia by the name of Wimdu, who was the Samwer brothers, who were part of Groupon. And so they were pretty formidable competitors. And we thought, well, if they're going to get there before we do, we're going to lose the entire continent. And so we took a big round of funding and took a leap of faith and decided to scale as quickly as possible. And so that actually entailed hiring general managers to build out teams, full teams, activation, sales, and marketing, my folks, in, I think, 9 countries in 7 months. So it was very, very aggressive.
So you mentioned you're going to lose the whole continent if you don't make that step, right? So is the whole industry sharing economy, is it going to be just a limited number of platforms? Let's say, car sharing, that's Uber, apartment sharing, whatever, accommodation, that's Airbnb, and there's no one else in the market? Or is it the winner takes it all? Or is it a lot of companies can be in?
I think that you can't deny the network effects of these things, and I think Airbnb is a great example where there's a real network effect because there's a ton of trust that you place in the community. It's a community product. Same with Palace's product. It's a whole community. There's actually, I think, plenty of room for competition in, for instance, in the space that Uber is in. It's very nice to be able to get into an Uber in San Francisco, take it to the airport, fly to London, and then take an Uber from the airport in London. But you may not have, you may have a different sort of connection with the company, and you're not necessarily. It's not the same driver who's going to drive you in both places. Sure. You know what I mean? So I think it definitely depends on the nature of the platform.
All right.
Okay, I would just like to jump in because it's a very interesting thing what we are talking now. Uber we associate with the transport market, right? Airbnb with accommodation. Your field is a bit broader. So basically it's shaping a lot like the traditional market. So basically it's a lot about reinventing services and products. And if you would wonder about the future, which is the upcoming market that will be changed by a sharing economy? What do you think is the future of sharing economy? I know
anyone wants to step in?
That's a great question. I mean, once you get shelter and transportation What's left?
Food?
Food and guns. You know, military equipment. Yeah,
Energy.
Energy. That's a good one. What was that?
This gentleman recommended wife swapping. I'm not married, so I have no comments about that.
So yeah, I mean that's tough to say, right? What is the next area? I mean, I think there's a long tail that's there. That's not, you know, there's these giant segments, and then what Paul is doing is actually kind of looking at a long tail of lots of different categories where there's room to fill in, and that can probably all be captured, that don't need to be segmented out into verticals, that can all be captured on kind of one platform. And it's also a great way to see, to try it out and then see where are their individual strengths, which I think is something you're doing with your sort of second launch, right?
Yeah, so the idea was in Lithuania because we, I would say we're afraid to stick to one category because it's a quite small market. So we launched a generic platform, but now we see that most of the deals are done from two categories. So I would call categories, and it's photo and video equipment and gaming. Yeah, so we decided that we would like to stick with photo and video equipment, and not only for professionals, but also for lovers, and everyone can rent out the very expensive camera or something like that. So an idea, I think, is of sharing economy. If you come to Vilnius, you can find place on Airbnb. And for example, I hope in some future you can book a car by Uber and you can hire a camera or gaming console or, I don't know, Google Glasses, everything you need on our platform. So that's moving. In our world, you guys are traveling a lot, yeah, and you, in the future, I see that, I would like to see that you don't need big case or big suitcase. You can travel with some clothes to other city and get everything you need, airport or from airport to your apartment in that country. So I think we can just predict that.
Oliver, you want to step in?
Yeah, if I could add just one more, I think another one maybe is beyond like sharing things. They're sharing like knowledge, right? So we're seeing. Actually, I saw a pitch last night for expertas.lt, which is doing this. The company that Michael Ernst is with, who was just speaking. What is the other one? In San Francisco, actually, an old colleague working on a company called Law Dingo that does legal services. So it's actually being able to, like, it's like time sharing, right? It's being able to take experts who know about stuff, and instead of having to kind of pre-book their time, instead of them having to pre-book their time and work, you know, and which is sort of inefficient, they can actually fill up their schedules with, you know, half-hour appointments or something that can be kind of booked on demand, and that's another form of sharing, I think.
Ligaya?
I agree. I think there's two traditional industries that have yet to sort of be disrupted, if you will. And we see some sort of predecessors for this in the energy space, like with a company called One Block Off the Grid, where they install solar panels on your house, and whatever you don't use goes back to the grid and then is sold. So imagine if everybody was doing that, or if a few people on your block could do that, you would have a completely self-sustaining neighborhood in terms of energy, which is really promising. And another thing that I've been thinking about, and I don't know of any that are doing this, I think probably because of HIPAA compliance, but is the healthcare space. So could you press a button and have a doctor show up at your door when you're sick and you can't go to the hospital? Or, you know, for your dog, if you need a veterinarian or something like that. And obviously they need a lot of equipment for certain types of services, but that could also be something that would be more efficient and kind of disrupt the current hospital model. And I wonder if that would allow more flexibility in practice for doctors as well, not have to work such grueling hours and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like here, like while listening to you, I understand like sharing economy is like a lot of advantages, right? We don't need to own things or services anymore. We can just like consume them all together. But I'm just thinking, and I'm trying to come up with something, if there are any downsides of sharing economy, like of this all consumption.
There are no downsides at all.
I just couldn't come up with anything, and I hope that...
Well, if the entire internet breaks, then I think we will all not have so many things.
Also, I think this phrase, this term, sharing economy is gonna. I mean, we're expanding that to kind of include more. Like it's a much broader definition than just sharing some things that you own, like your car or like your cameras. But really, what the whole thing is it's finding efficiencies. It is so inefficient for me to own a $1,000 camera if I only use it once a week. Like that's a complete. I mean, it's a waste of resources, physical resources. It's a waste of the oil that went to make the plastic, that went to make the body of the camera, and it's a waste of my capital to just have it sitting there. So as the population of the planet increases and and there's more competition for resources, like it only makes sense that we should use our newfound incredible technology that we've built to communicate rapidly, and we should come up with more efficient ways to utilize it. Everything from physical things to money, to micro lending and all these things where we can utilize things on these short time scales and really make efficient use of them.
Yeah, I think there's also the point of access. That there's a lot of people that now have the ability to access certain types of products or services that were completely inaccessible to them in the past because they were cost prohibitive or otherwise. And so I think, if you think about the sort of standard of living and how that's being improved by the sharing economy and how the redistribution of wealth in different economies are improving, I'm not sure if there's a market downside.
Boris, you want to jump in?
I would say that from Eastern European perspective or Lithuania, Poland perspective, because we are looking into that markets as well, we need to find synergy or conversation with authorities as well. I'm talking from our side, because taxation, it's a challenge for taxation system. It's a completely new thing in some Lithuanian cases, legal insurance system. So I think next 2-3 years in our region will be extremely important to find the best deals on taxation and other services or with authorities and with some traditional business who can help sharing economy.
Sure. So from what it sounds, sharing economy has a lot of upsides. And as you mentioned, internet is going to break down, and then that's the only downside. So there's something everyone's kind of gonna to move to, right? It's interesting because if you look back 25 years ago, even my parents' generation, right, the biggest dream for them was owning something, physically having an ownership to a flat, to a car, to anything that they can feel and touch, right? And 20 years later, we're talking maybe owning things is a thing of the past, and we're moving towards completely new things. So any final remarks for this message? Is it a cycle, or are we moving to the sharing economy forever?
I don't think there's any going back. I think I really think that this is about being more efficient with what we have, and there's a lot of activity in everywhere towards greener consumption and more just being more thoughtful about our impact on the world. I mean, 20 years ago there were probably 5.75 billion people on the planet, and now there's 7 billion people on the planet, right? We have to really think about this stuff, and how can we all have access to the things that more and more people want to have access to, and this is a great way to accomplish that.
Final remarks?
No, I think Oliver covered it well, but I think that for those of us that are building these sort of products, I think one thing to keep in mind is the Achilles heel of quality and quality control, and how to make sure that the services are safe, trustworthy, or that the products themselves are good quality. So just a small note on that point.
Yeah, trust is a big issue, and brand trust. Users should trust brand and not only other users. So it's very important from our as a developer side And Oliver mentioned that there is no way back, and I'm very excited about companies like Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, BlaBlaCar, because we showed the world that the sharing economy is a very powerful player in all industries, like hotels, taxi, and etc. So I think that we are on the right way now, and you're moving very fast. We hope we will catch you up in some year.
We finally got it right. Rasa, any final thoughts on that? Or should we close this panel and call it the end of the day one?
Yeah, like I still can't come up with any downsides, so I will brainstorm a little bit more at home. But so far, all sounds good.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. I guess this is the end of the panel. And now, guys, to the rest of you that made it to the very end of day one, I actually have an announcement to make. I want to announce all the teams that made it to start a battle, and it's my job to do it right now. So give me just a second. I have a list right there, and you can keep like entertaining people. I don't know.
Anybody have any questions?
Anyone has questions?
Yes. Come up and grab the mic.
Yeah.
Okay. I can help you.
All right.
Hello. I just read an article about about how people own things. Like you know how animals they don't own things. They can own a like nest or something. They can own some part of the land, like their territory, but they can't own things because lack of their I don't remember what brain activity, but they can't remember exact things. Like we can remember very specific shapes and so on. So maybe it's some kind of coming back, but more thoughtful way, or maybe it's just animals maybe are more efficient than us. So that's it.
Did you guys get the question?
Clarify the question.
I don't think it was a question. I think it was just a statement.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no comeback from your side. One more question. Let's do a gentleman in the green.
Thank you. You mentioned that there's no downsides of shared economy except the fact that the web can go down and we'll have problems. But I've been reading stories recently that people are having problems when they're renting, I think they're leasing cars, and then when they haven't made a payment for a single day, they get their cars shut down and they can't get their kids to school. So do you really think that there's no problem like that if you don't own things that are essential and you rent them instead? When you come into a difficult situation, when you can't pay your bills, or maybe mistakes, you know, like the bank doesn't accept credit card for some reason, you don't have a car or any other essentials that are very important for your daily life, I actually feel that this is a big problem that wasn't solved yet with shared economy. Of course, it's really in an early stage, but still, can you please comment on that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think there's one thing, which is that if you use something, if your utilization, there's an efficient threshold where if you utilize it enough, then usually the cost of owning it becomes more efficient than the cost of effectively renting it from someone. So I don't know that I would say that ownership is going away completely. That seems like a far future thing. But the other thing is, if one industry becomes more fluid, then maybe you expect other industries to become more fluid as well. So if let's say there's a future where the car ownership becomes completely fluid and cars are only rented for the period of time where you need it, and then you get let's say laid off from a job or whatever, you can't make the payment for the next day, and suddenly you can't get to work. First off, that is an issue even if you've purchased a car and you're making lease payments on it or loan payments on it, right? You miss a payment, even now your car or your house or whatever could still be repossessed and whatnot. But the other thing is that if we see this if we see the car rental market becoming very liquid, being liquefied as we were hearing about before. Maybe we also see the lending of money becoming very much more liquid market, and the idea of having, you're like, oh, I missed this payment, but actually I can get a 36-hour loan for $1,000 or something to bridge me over. Like I can see. It's already happening. It is already happening. So I can see that obviously there are problems that are presented, there are complications, but we're all humans in a sense, and we all want this system to work. And so I think that things will crop up that help, that fill in those blanks that are created by the new technologies. I have a very optimistic view of the future, though.
All right. Any more questions? All right. We'll take two, I guess. One over there. We'll catch you over there.
Hello. Oh, very informative and very nice panel. Thank you. I just want to ask that I heard that the Lenoir.lt, big of part of their business is people who want to start their own business and lending and renting their stuff. I want to ask Uber's and Airbnb's representatives, how big of a business, how big of a part of your business are people who are trying to make money and trying to maybe get their first step in business and, watching their finances and making money and maybe the first step of creating their own separate business?
I have a story that I mean, Uber, the partners that Uber works with there's 1,000 success stories about just this kind of thing, people who want to go into business for themselves. The first partner who was in San Francisco now has this like big fleet of cars that are all on the Uber system, and is himself a small business owner. But one of the like great stories I had that was like firsthand was I got in San Francisco. Uber also dispatches taxi cabs, and I got in the taxi. I ordered one through Uber, and I get in the car, and this was in like November 2013, I think. And the guy, we're driving across town, and I didn't tell him I worked at Uber. I didn't bring any of this up. I think he probably asked me, "Oh, do you use Uber often?" And I say yes. And I say, how long have you been driving with Uber? And he says, he tells me, and then he launches. I didn't ask. He launches into this story about how much he loves the platform and how great it is. And then he tells me, he's like, I love it. But I don't like driving a cab because as a taxi cab driver, I have to deal with all this old school like overhead in the taxi company. And if I want dispatches, I have to pay the dispatcher, the person who does the dispatches, I have to pay him $20 at the beginning of every shift. And that's $20 that comes out of my pocket. With Uber, I don't have that. He's like, so my New Year's resolution for myself is I'm going to put together the money for a down payment, I'm going to buy my own car, and I'm going to put it on UberX, and I'm going to go into business for myself. So this is a story that we see over and over again. Like absolutely, this is a platform where people are launching more independent careers from what they've been in before. So, yeah.
You asked for hard numbers about how many, what percentage of people have been now independent business owners. I'm not sure. I left Airbnb 2 years ago, but when I was there, it wasn't actually so significant. We saw that people that were property managers would join and post their places, but what we did see most predominantly was people that needed some flexibility in their lives. Maybe they were mothers and wanted to spend more time with their kids, or they were artists or baristas or photographers, and had these other sort of creative careers that they needed to supplement with their Airbnb money. And it allowed them to be to kind of have these careers where they didn't have to go work 9 to 5 every day. They got to spend more time with their families. And that was really, really inspiring for all of us to see that not only was Airbnb a sort of outlet where they could get to know other people, but also create this income that allowed them to follow career paths that they might not have the freedom to otherwise.
All right, the last question, gentleman on the left. Do we still have the microphone? Fair enough. That will be the last question. You can ask in person afterwards. All right.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I have a vision about renting things, and I want to share it with you for comments. Today, the simplest thing to do when you need something is to go and buy it. It's the traditional way. What are you suggesting is that people don't need to own things, and you just can go and rent it whenever you want it. And if this model succeeds, if everybody doesn't need to own anything, I don't think it would be a bad idea. But I think that the model could be changed by companies which in result will not sell as much things as they sell today, because nobody just buy things, they rent everything. And what I see is that I think that companies will start to rent things too and be in a competition with people. Do you have any thoughts about that, and have you ever thought about it, and maybe some comments? Thank you.
So first of all, yeah, companies are going to rent, and BMW, Ford are creating departments for sharing economy. We are creating completely new cars just for sharing economy. I would say that in the future we will have and photo cameras and something that you can unlock with your phones and etc. just used by that. But it doesn't mean that platforms like ours or others will not be on the market. They will be as a tool and for companies as well. Of course, on the other hand, how you mentioned the number of people, more than 7 billion people on the earth. Yeah, so from that supply chain, you can see that there are a lot of potential owners as well on that side. And sharing economy is, as I see from our product, is not only offering you to don't buy, just rent. We have very strong service, try before buying. Yeah, so if you need, you sometimes don't know if you need something really. So for example, do you want to buy today Google glasses for, I know, 4,000 liters? It's quite tricky, yeah, because it's a new device, you don't know how to use it, and etc. Or completely new Xbox, etc. So we offer as well to try out before, think about it, and just after that take your decision, make your decision.
All right, I guess we're going to call it the end of the panel. Thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much for listening. A few things before you leave, though. There's an after party happening, and I'm about to tell you where it's going to happen. But before that, I'm going to read the names of the finalists, and you're going to have to sit here and wait for me to finish it. So, the first company that's going to make it to tomorrow's finals, Inside Warehouse, congratulations. PepperTix, Spectral Coin, Aciety, Neuron Tools, Dev2Dev, Taxify, Planner, Kula, Tutatunes, and Farmis. These are the companies that are going to the finals tomorrow, 4 p.m. We're done with the day. The after party is at Islandia Street, so keep that in mind. Roughly 9-10 p.m. That's where everyone's going to be going to. And for the VIP pass holders, you're supposed to have gotten an email already. If you haven't got an email yet, come to me, but check your mailboxes, and at 7 p.m. we're going to see you at the VIP dinner. Thank you so much, and we'll see you tonight and tomorrow. Thank you, guys.